That's a wrap on the stadium. That's a wrap on the regular season. And we're on to the playoffs as the Bills head to Jacksonville.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Happy Victory Monday to you. The Buffalo Bills defeated the Jets 35-8 and finished the season 12-5, second in the AFC East and the #6 seed in the AFC playoffs. They will face the Jacksonville Jaguars in the opening round. Was an emotional day, right? I shared my farewell message to the stadium in our final conversation before this game, but even from 600 miles away here in Charlotte, North Carolina, you could feel the weight of this being the last game at the stadium. So many great memories and stories and thoughts have been shared throughout the course of the week. And I think us, Bills Mafia, has done the best we can to send the stadium off the right way. It sounds like the game day experience also did it justice the best you could. And, you know, my thought as I was watching the game was just the reality of the visuals of what Buffalo Bills home football games look like. They're never going to be the same, right? You watch a Bills home game on TV, it looks a certain way, it feels a certain way, and now we're going to have to recalibrate what that normal is. But that stadium has given over 50 years to the community. It has ran its course. I think anyone that's been there can appreciate that. It has run its course, and I'm excited for our new home. And I'll tell you what, those red helmets, I thought they looked so good. I was falling hard watching the game, of course, but throughout the course of the week, as you're starting to see practice pictures, and then when they took the field and those things, I was feeling all types of things. I certainly hope they are part of the rotation moving forward. I need to see those at least once a year. All right, so we'll focus a little bit on this game. We'll talk about things I liked. We'll talk about some of the concerns coming out of the game, which is mostly going to be injury stuff. And then we'll get into a very preliminary conversation about the Bills' opening playoff matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. When it comes to things I liked from this game, we'll start with offensive execution. Mitch Trubisky comes in after Josh Allen takes his first snap to start the game, hands the ball to James Cook, and that's it for Josh. But Trubisky comes in and, had a great game, 22 of 29 for 259 yards and 4 touchdowns. Obviously, we don't get a chance to see him play very often. That's the way we prefer it. And so it's nice to see him, even against a horrible Jets team, they go out there and execute at a high level. Everybody wanted to give Drake May his flowers for the game he had against the Jets last week. Well, look, Mitch Trubisky said, I can do good stuff against this Jets defense too. So you had a great day passing the ball. You had a great day running the football. Of course, headlined by Ray Davis, 21 rushes, 151 yards. It was good to see that, right? A guy that's kind of had a quiet sophomore season as James Cook really just handled it, right? And Ray comes in and gets some run at the end of the season and is very, very productive. You saw guys involved in the passing game. Dalton Kincaid, 3 catches on 3 targets for 48 yards. Obviously the Bills offense is at its best when Kincaid's out there, and, he means a lot to Josh Allen. So it's nice to see him get a little work ahead of the postseason run. And Gabe Davis, I thought, was terrific. 4 catches and a touchdown, 51 yards on 7 targets. That's some really tough grabs, right? Some contested wins as well. The 4th down touchdown was awesome. Dawson Knox has 2 for 24 and a touchdown on 2 targets. collected some nice incentives along the way. He can buy lots of diapers with the was it $200K and incentives he was able to rack up in this game. Ty Johnson came in, had a couple of touchdowns, and he got a $250,000 incentive for the 2-touchdown game. Kaleki Letu has spent most of the year on the practice squad, comes in, 3 catches for 31 yards. Reggie Gilliam had a 22-yard catch. I mean, even Keon Coleman, 2 for 49. The Bills offense had 30 first downs, 35 points, 470 yards. And so we just went through a bunch of different players that made plays, right? Quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. And while they all deserve a lot of credit because I think they played well, to me, what this offensive performance really speaks to is the offensive line depth. You know, the Bills didn't play their starters outside of Osiris Torrance at right guard. And so you have Tylen Grable at left tackle, Ryan Vandemark at right tackle, Alec Anderson at left guard, Cedric Van Pran Granger at center. And while it was against a horrible Jets unit, they obviously dominated, right? And I think this offense was able to function like it did because of the strength of the offensive linemen that were on the field. And we're not going to get too into the offseason conversation, but there is a big offensive line conversation to be had in the coming months because there's big decisions to be made. Connor McGovern, the Bills starting center, David Edwards, the Bills starting left guard, they're both expiring contracts. And I would expect both of those guys to get a really lucrative extension, whether that's in Buffalo or they sign a new contract with some other team. They're going to be expensive to keep. Then you have Ryan Vandemark and Alec Anderson, who are restricted free agents. And that tender is going to be over $3 million. Can you pay reserve offensive linemen that type of money? Will other teams look at them as starters? Should the Bills look at them as starters? As potential succession plans for some of these guys that are up for renewal in McGovern and Edwards. Then you have Tylen Grable and Cedric Van Pran Granger, who were both guys that have played well in the preseason. Of course, not really this year with Van Pran Granger, but Grable last year. Van Pran Granger, I have really enjoyed every time I've seen him on the field. I liked him a lot at Georgia. Like, what do you have in those guys? Fortunately, the Bills' offensive line has been really healthy, especially on the interior. So we haven't really seen these guys have a chance to play. And so it was good to see the offense function like it did. I think it's a testament to who these guys are, but also a really good opportunity for them to get some experience and, you know, for the Bills to get a really important data point right here from this game that are going to help inform these big decisions that they have to make, because maybe you do have a young guy that's ready to step into a starting role, and that's going to allow you to save on extending, you know, McGovern or Edwards. Those are really tough decisions to make. And, you know, I'll obviously put the time into developing some opinions on that, but just for right now, be aware of those decisions that are coming and appreciate that this was an opportunity to gain some insight on, you know, what you should do, because I think it's pretty tricky. But overall, the offense was incredible. And for as much as we can highlight quarterbacks and running backs and receivers and tight ends, and they deserve their flowers as well, this offensive line, I thought, really did a great job of making that all possible for those playmakers. All right, we got a lot more to do. We'll talk about the defensive side of the football, and then we're going to be holding our breath on injuries. Matt Prater, Max Hairston. We'll talk about it here next, folks. Be sure to stick with me. Kicking off the year feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is the easiest win. When I stay on top of it, my energy, focus, and mood all level up. But let's be real, plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. That's where Drip Drop comes in. Doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work together. Think clearer focus, better energy, elevated mood, even that fresh skin glow. I've been using Drip Drop as part of my daily routine, and it's honestly a game changer, not just for workouts, but every single day. And it tastes amazing. I'm obsessed with the cherry limeade flavor, and there are 16 original flavors and 8 zero sugar options to choose from. And Drip Drop's science-backed formula is trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, and over 90% of top college and proteins because it rehydrates you faster and more effectively than water alone. They have flexible subscription options, so you're never stuck without it, whether you're hitting the gym, juggling work, or just staying consistent with your goals. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is a daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. You can get started on Prize Picks. It's quick and it's simple. The app is super easy to navigate. It's going to make these games more exciting, especially when you're following those individual player performances. And the new early payouts feature is a game changer. If a player starts hot, you can cash out before the game ends. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Well, folks, welcome back. We just raved about the offensive execution, and now we'll do the same thing on the defensive side of the football because the defense was outstanding. I mean, the Bills won this game 35-8, and obviously it's against a very lifeless Jets outfit, right? I mean, they're playing Brady Cook, who's an undrafted rookie free agent quarterback with a bunch of receivers that just got on the team. They trade away their best players, right? I mean, we know what's going on here with the Jets. They're a pretty lifeless operation, and the Bills came out and took it to them. Now, obviously, the Bills were playing, their backups, and the Bills' backups went out there and smoked the Jets. And so, yeah, there's a lot of good to say about this overall performance. But nonetheless, the Bills' defense goes out there and limits the Jets to only 9 first downs, 8 points. That was really set up from the Jets had a nice kick return at one point that gave them, a shorter field. They were able to score a touchdown on it. But, I mean, ultimately 122 yards, and this is against the Bills' backups. I thought it was fun to see some of the guys out there playing that normally don't get a ton of run, guys like Joanne Dreeson. What a game for him, right? I mean, you could see the splash plays he was making all over the place, run stops, tackles for loss, flying around. And, for a guy that's a local, right, grew up in Western New York, going to Bills games, gets a chance to have a major role in the last ever game at the stadium and the red helmets. I'm sure that was a really fun day for him, and I certainly enjoyed that. I thought him and Dorian Williams were both flying around, making a ton of plays, fast, physical, and, kind of set the tone for the defensive effort. Thought Larry Ogunjobi had some really nice flashes in this game, and that's nice because after he was a healthy scratch a few weeks ago, I thought he had a good game last week against the Eagles, and then he parlayed that into a nice one against the Jets. TJ Sanders gets a sack. It was nice to see. I think he's been cranking up. Phi Mathis feels like he's cranking up a little bit. And it was good just overall to see some of these guys running around. Keontae Jenkins off the practice squad. Jordan Hancock, Darnell Savage got some run. It was fun to see those guys go out there and take care of business. Got to see Matthew Judon. I'll be honest, didn't really pop watching the game live. We'll see what the tape reveals, but you think about Andre Jones and what he's given this team in some meaningful games over the last two, really. I would definitely be going with Jones over Judon in the playoffs. We'll see if the tape tells me a different story. I don't think it's going to. And so the Bills will have a chance to elevate, a couple of players per week from the practice squad. And if they're thinking D-line, I'm thinking Jones over Judon, but we'll see where that goes. So, yeah, just a dominant day for the defense. So, really limited the Jets, and I was disappointed that they scored. I was hoping for a shutout. But the Bills were able to not throw an interception in this game, so the Jets become the first team in the history of the NFL that goes an entire season without intercepting a pass, which is remarkable. Like, how do you not just have one that's tipped up in the air and somebody settles under it at some point, right? Just something happens. Not even once for the Jets. The only team in the history of the NFL that didn't get an interception. Now, there was a couple that were close, but ultimately no interceptions for the Jets. And the Bills did their job, making sure that didn't happen. All right, so let's get into some things I didn't like, and obviously it's really going to be about a couple of injuries. Matt Prater, quad injury, missed the last 2 games with a quad injury. Sean McDermott was asked about it after the game. He called it unfortunate. How annoying are kicker issues, right? Matt Prater, of course, comes in, in the aftermath of the Tyler Bass situation where he gets shut down, and Prater comes in and he's been terrific, right? Terrific. Made, 90% or better of his field goals this year? I mean, all things considered, I thought Matt Prater's been terrific. And then all of a sudden, a quad injury, misses a couple games, and, Michael Badgley came in and he was horrible. That Eagles game is probably different if the Bills have Matt Prater, because he probably makes both the extra points and the Bills win the game. Pretty unfortunate. So what are the Bills going to do? You're going to go into the playoffs and you're going to have to sign some kicker that's available right now. It's not like you can get some kicker off another team, right? Those rosters are locked. It's over with. They have to be like a legitimate free agent. So the Bills are going to get some random guy that's going to step in and be kicking in the playoffs. And that's, I don't want to have to deal with that, but that's the world that we're going to live in unless, Matt Prater wakes up in the morning and feels great. I don't think that's going to be the case. He couldn't finish the game. So obviously you have questions about that. Should they have just rolled with Badgley for another week and let Prater heal up? I don't know. It's obviously a lot of questions about that, but ultimately the reality is the Bills are entering this postseason with a kicker that's probably not on the team right now. And that's very unsettling. The other injury, Max Hairston, ankle injury, happens kind of late in the game. Honestly, what I think about with that Hairston injury, I hope it's nothing. It looked like it could be some level of an ankle sprain or something, but ultimately this is a consequence of the Darius Slay debacle, where not only did you not get Darius Slay, but you had to release Jamarcus Ingram, who is on the Texans. If Brandon Beane didn't botch that situation, Jamarcus Ingram's in there playing and not Max Hairston. But ultimately, you have a football game that you got to get through. And ultimately, Max Hairston's the 3rd string corner, right? It's Benford's the 1, White's the 2. Then it's Hairston. What are you supposed to do? It's an unfortunate situation. If you have Jamarcus Ingram, it might be different. Maybe the criticism you would extend is, hey, well, you had an opportunity to elevate a defensive back, Dane Jackson or whatever. I think actually Dane Jackson might be out of elevations, but you have somebody on the practice squad you can elevate. It's a tricky situation. It's unfortunate. So, yeah, I don't like that, right? That's what I don't like. I don't like Matt Prater with a quad injury. I don't like Max Hairston with an ankle injury. I did this thing. I started to think about the season. The Bills finished 12-5, and you I don't know, you're probably like me, and you get to the end of a season, you're like, some of those games just bother you. You think about the losses, right? The Bills lose to the Patriots, the Falcons, the Texans, the Dolphins, the Eagles, and you're like, man, that Pats loss was goofy. The Falcons loss was goofy. Had a million chances to beat the Eagles and a million chances to beat the Texans, and you can get all frustrated about it. And then you're like, well, they came back in heroic fashion against Baltimore, had a big comeback against the Bengals, had a big comeback against the Patriots. And so, for as much as you could get frustrated over a few losses, you could think, well, yeah, they kind of were on the good side of it on some wins. And you're reminded of that quote, you are what your record says you are. And 12-5 is what the 2025 Bills are. And it's unfortunate that that's not good enough to win the division this year, as the Patriots finish the season with one of the softest schedules in the history of the NFL. Their opponents had a combined win percentage of .390. Literally one of the all-time softest schedules, but that's the league. They took advantage. They caught lightning in a bottle. Drake May year 2, get Mike Vrabel in the building, last place schedule, and go do it, right? And what's funny about it is one of the games they lost was to the Raiders, which is one of the 3 non-common games the Bills had against, you play the same teams except for 3 in every year when you're division. They lost to the Raiders. But that's the way it goes this year. All right, we got more to do. We'll talk a little bit about this Jacksonville matchup here on the other side of it, and the Bills' 2026 opponents are finalized. So we'll peep that as well. So folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The new year doesn't require a new you, maybe just a less burden you. We all carry things that weigh us down or hold us back, and therapy can help you identify what those things are by offering an unbiased perspective to better understand your relationships, motivations, and emotions. That's where BetterHelp comes in. It's going to make it easy to get matched with an online and qualified therapist who can help you work through whatever's holding you back. What obstacles have you learned to let go of, right? And things that you think about throughout your life, things that you've let go of that'll help you move on. And BetterHelp and the therapists are going to help you identify those things. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's pressure, perfection, or doubt that's weighing you down. All BetterHelp therapists are fully licensed in the United States and work according to a strict code of conduct. They do the matching work for you. A short questionnaire identifies your needs and preferences, and with over 12 years of experience, they typically get it right the first time. But if you're not happy with your match, you can switch to a different therapist at any time. With over 30,000 therapists and an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 based on over 1.7 million client reviews, BetterHelp has served over 5 million people globally, and it works. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched with an online therapist. And so sign up today and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Folks, there's nothing like being at the stadium, the crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. That's the frustrating part with getting tickets is, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly intuitive. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets will only take you a few minutes. And you're going to love being able to see the view from your seat so you know exactly what to expect when you get to the stadium. There'll be no surprises. And you're going to love that the fees are all included up front. So the price you see is the price you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. All right, so the Bills are going to face the Jacksonville Jaguars in the wild card round of the playoffs. The Jaguars 13-4. Their 4 losses were to the Bengals in week 2. And then they dropped, I think, back-to-back games to Seattle and the Rams. And then they lost to the Texans. And then they've won their last 8 games. Those 8 games include 2 against the Titans, 2 against the Colts, the Jets, the Cardinals, and they also beat the Broncos and Chargers. So a couple of quality wins along the way there. They get a lot of takeaways on defense. One of the highest percentage of drives that end at a takeaway defensively. They're doing a great job with that. Trevor Lawrence, their quarterback, is playing really good ball right now, probably one of the best stretches of his career. And it felt like their passing offense really settled in when it was not about Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, and it was about Parker Washington, who has really emerged for them. Brenton Strange at tight end, really athletic tight end. He got back into the mix after missing some time, and then they traded for Jacoby Myers from the Raiders. That's a player I was really hoping the Bills would trade for, and has really changed that passing offense. And it's more running through those guys. And of course, Travis Hunter's been injured, and Brian Thomas Jr. has not been nearly as featured as those guys. And things have really taken off for that passing offense, and Trevor Lawrence is playing, probably the best ball of his career. Their rushing offense hasn't really been there. They have a pretty good back in Travis Etienne, but they're not a super consistent offense in terms of running the football. They stop the run really well. That's been one of their bright spots as a team, is stopping the run, but their pass rush hasn't really shown up. So they have been a very quiet pass rush, but still able to get a lot of takeaways on the defensive side of the football. They've got an unbelievable kicker in Cam Little. I think he's made from 67 and 68 this year. So, it doesn't take much for them to get into scoring range. So their kicker situation will be a lot better than the Bills for this game. I think they're a very potent team. They got a couple of good young coaches. Liam Cohen's their head coach, came over from Tampa, who, you thought about Baker Mayfield last year and the great season that he had. He was Will Levis's coach when at Kentucky, the year that Will Levis had like the best year of his career, it was under Liam Cohen. So I think Liam Cohen's got the best out of Will Levis, Baker Mayfield, and now Trevor Lawrence. I think he's a good coach. And then on the defensive side of the football, their coordinator is a young guy, Anthony Campanile, who was with Green Bay last year, kind of came up with the Dolphins. Good-looking young defensive coordinator. So they're well coached. They're kind of a young operation here, but there's some ingenuity with what they're doing, right? They have some different types of ideas with how they're kind of building their operation. And obviously it's off to a great start. They're 13-4 and won the division. And, I think with any new coaching staff, you're going to go through your lumps early on, but they come out of this thing 13-4. The Texans were surging. They hold off the Texans. And of course the Colts started 7-1, 8-2. And the Jaguars were able to, catch them. Obviously the Colts certainly had a lot of injuries, but it's been a great year for Jacksonville, and they've earned the right to host a playoff game. Now their reward is Josh Allen and the Bills. And so, we'll obviously do our normal primer and get ready for this game. But one thing that no team is going to be able to say they have in the AFC is Josh Allen and the playoff experience that the Bills have. And, you have first year head coach, playoff roster that probably doesn't come close to the amount of playoff experience the Bills have, right? I know Trevor Lawrence has had playoff games, right? We've seen some of the highs and lows there as well, but it's nothing like what Josh Allen and this Bills team shows up with. But obviously the Bills have to go on the road, and they've never won a road playoff game under Sean McDermott, so they'll have to figure that out. They're 0-5 on the road, so it's gonna be a tough test for sure. It's the playoffs; everybody's good. And I think this will be a really unique matchup that I'm excited to really kind of dive into throughout the course of the week, and you'll be ready for it. I promise you that by the time this week's over. Real quick, we got a chance to know the Bills' opponents for 2026. Contrary to what a lot of people believe, the schedules are pretty much set, years and years in advance. It's all a rotation. Your division, you play a rotation of other divisions and things like that. It's not like there's any process to it other than a normal rotation that exists. There's 3 games that are different with your divisional opponents every year. So this is what the Bills will have next year. They're home. They have 8 home games and 9 road games. The 8 home games, of course, the 3 divisional games, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets. Other teams coming to the new Highmark Stadium, Chiefs, Chargers, Bears, Lions, and then whoever loses the Ravens and Steelers game on Sunday Night Football. I'm recording at halftime of it, so I don't know how that finishes. Baltimore's up 10-3. The away games for the Bills will be, of course, the AFC East, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets. Then they go to Denver, Green Bay, the Raiders, Vikings, Texans, and Rams. So it's a pretty tough second-place schedule for sure, based on the way it looks right now. But who knows, right? I mean, who knows what these teams are going to be like next year? There's a lot that's going to happen this offseason. The 3 games that are not the same as everyone else in the Bills division is the AFC North game. So the Bills will play the loser of Ravens, Steelers, and that Texans road game, that Rams road game. So you'll play the same place finisher as your the AFC East, right? We'll play the same place finisher in the AFC North, AFC South, and NFC West. So those are the 3 games that are different for all the teams in the division. As for this week on the podcast, as of the recording right now, we don't know when the Bills are going to play. They could play Saturday. They could play Sunday. So that'll impact things a little bit. But you'll get Bill Squad at 1:30 p.m. on Monday. Myself and Jerry Ostrowski, we're going to get together and have our normal roundtable discussion. And then we'll meet up again later in the week for, kind of whatever storylines come up throughout the course of the week. And then we'll get ready for Jacksonville. And then our normal programming with Locked On Bills. I plan on it being a regular week, all 22 review, herd mentality, crossover, the primer, my final thoughts. If the Bills do wind up playing Saturday, we'll have to adjust that a little bit. But we'll see where it goes. Heading to Jacksonville to get this playoff run started. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Thanks for being here. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.